long road to nowhere. It was a chilly October evening when Daniel Carver loaded his rusty Ford pickup and left home. At 38, he'd secured a new job teaching history in a small college town called Black Hollow, 6 hours north of his old life in Riverton. The sky burned orange as he tossed a duffel bag into the cab, his breath misting in the crisp air. His sister, Mara, had offered to ride along, but Daniel waved her off. "I'm a grown man," he said, flashing a grin. "I've got this." The first 2 hours passed smoothly. He cranked up an old rock playlist, tapping the wheel as the highway rolled out ahead. Streetlights blinked by, and the world buzzed with possibility. But as dusk faded into night, the road grew still. Fewer cars appeared. More shadows crept in. By the third hour, his gas gauge hovered low. His phone's map app chimed. A station called Miller's Fuel Stop, 15 miles ahead on Route 7. Perfect, he thought. Coffee and a quick stretch. The exit appeared suddenly. He veered off the highway onto a twisting road lined with towering pines. The air thickened here, heavy with silence. The station loomed from the darkness. A sagging shack with chipped paint and 2 lonely pumps. A single bulb flickered overhead. Daniel pulled in, unease tingling his skin. No one stirred. Just an old Chevy sat near the store, its hood streaked with rust. He stepped out, the wind hissing through the trees. Something felt off. Daniel gripped the pump, his eyes scanning the shadows. The nozzle clicked as gas flowed, but the silence gnawed at him. Then he heard it, boots crunching on gravel. He spun around. A man approached, tall and wiry, with a wild mop of white hair and a patchy beard. His coat draped over him like a scarecrow's rags. His eyes glinted faintly under the dim light. "You lost, friend?" the man rasped, his voice rough like dry leaves. "Just passing through," Daniel replied, forcing a tight smile. "Heading to Black Hollow." The stranger edged closer, too close. "You don't want to stay here. Not on this road. Not after midnight." Daniel's gut twisted. "Why's that?" The man's gaze darted to the trees. "Folks vanish out here. Been that way since I was young. Some blame the land. Others, something darker." He leaned in, breath sour. "Get back on Route 7. Don't stop till you're past Miller's Crossing." Daniel nodded, dread seeping in. "Thanks for the tip." The stranger shuffled off, muttering under his breath. Daniel finished fueling, climbed into his truck, and sped away. The highway welcomed him back, but his hands trembled on the wheel. Just a creepy old guy, he told himself. Nothing more. The road stretched on, dark and endless. Daniel glanced at the clock. 11:30. Black Hollow was still 2 hours off. He tried focusing on the music, but the stranger's words clung like cobwebs. "Folks vanish out here. Ridiculous, surely?" He was just tired. Then headlights flared in his rearview mirror. A black van, battered and bulky, roared closer. Daniel frowned. Probably someone rushing. But the van didn't pass. Stuck to his tail, engine snarling. His pulse quickened. He sped up 50, then 60 miles an hour. The van matched him, inches from his bumper. "Come on," he muttered, knuckles white on the wheel. The highway lay empty, no help in sight. The van swerved, pulling alongside. 3 men sat inside, faces hidden in shadow. The passenger rolled down his window, shouting words lost to the wind. Daniel glimpsed metal, a gun? His heart slammed against his chest. Instinct kicked in. He hit the brakes hard. The van shot past, tires screeching. Daniel jerked the wheel, crossing the median in a wild swoop. Horns blared as he dodged oncoming cars. The van spun to chase, but he floored it, weaving through traffic. His breath came in ragged gasps. Who were they? Why him? Daniel pushed the Ford to its breaking point, the engine groaning. The van faded in his mirrors, swallowed by night. He didn't ease up. Sweat beaded on his brow, his mind spinning. The stranger's warning rang, something darker. Was this it? Thieves? Worse? After 20 minutes, the van vanished. Daniel exhaled, shaky but alive. Black Hollow's lights twinkled ahead, a promise of safety. He took the exit onto Elm Street, winding through quiet streets to the college. His new apartment perched above the history department, a brick building cloaked in ivy. He parked, legs wobbly as he stepped out. Inside, he bolted the door and slumped onto the couch. The chase replayed in his skull, those men, that van. He dialed the police, voice quaking as he explained. The officer sounded bored. "Not much to go on, Mr. Carver. Maybe drunk kids. We'll check it out." Daniel hung up, unconvinced. Sleep dodged him. Every creak of the old building snapped him awake. At 3 in the morning, he swore he heard footsteps outside his window. He peeked through the blinds, only shadows. Exhaustion dragged him under, but the dread stayed. Morning brought gray clouds and a jittery Daniel. He unpacked boxes, trying to settle. The apartment reeked of dust and aged wood. His first class loomed in 3 days, Monday, October 15th. Plenty of time to shake off that hellish drive. Around noon, he heard it. A faint murmur, like voices seeping through the walls. He froze, straining to listen. The sound ebbed, then sharpened. Words he couldn't grasp. He checked the hallway, empty. Back inside, it swelled, rising from the floorboards. Kneeling, he pressed his ear to the wood. "Don't stay," it hissed. Daniel lurched back, heart racing. His imagination. The building was ancient. Pipes creaked, but the voice felt real, insistent. He snatched his phone, searching Black Hollow history. The results chilled him. Dozens of missing persons cases, stretching back decades. Most last seen near Route 7. That night, the whisper grew louder. "They're coming." Sleep fled again. He stared at the ceiling, fear gnawing his stomach. What was this place? Sunday dawned cold. Daniel roamed campus, craving distraction. The history building towered, its windows dark. He found the basement archives, a dusty labyrinth of shelves. Maybe work would steady him. He pulled files on local history, skimming faded pages. One snagged his eye. The Miller's Crossing incident, 1962. A blurry photo showed a gas station Miller's fuel stop. The article listed 5 vanishings tied to the place. Witnesses swore a shadow figure lured travelers astray. No bodies ever surfaced. Daniel's throat tightened. The stranger's warning, was it true? He dug further. Tales of a cult in the 1950s, linked to Route 7. They revered something called the Hollow One, a force said to stalk the land. Sacrifices, disappearances, whispers in the dark. Daniel snapped the file shut, pulse hammering. Insane. Yet the whispers in his apartment. The van. Back home, the air felt dense. The whispers turned to a chant. "He sees you." Daniel grabbed a flashlight, scouring the floorboards. Nothing. Still, the sound swelled, thrumming through him. He wasn't alone. Monday came, damp and bleak. Daniel met his colleague, Ellen Price, a 50-year-old professor with keen eyes. She greeted him over coffee in the faculty lounge. "You look awful," she said plainly. "Rough weekend," he confessed. "Long drive. Strange stuff." Her brow creased. "Route 7. He nodded, wary. "Yeah, got chased by some guys. And heard things here." Ellen leaned closer. "People hush it up, but Black Hollow's got secrets. My uncle disappeared on that road in 1981. Cops claimed he bolted. I never believed it." Daniel swallowed hard. "You think it's something else?" "Could be," she said. "Folks say the land's cursed. Old-timers call it the Hollow One's domain. I don't know what's real, but I've heard whispers too. In my house, years back. That night, the chants surged. He knows your name." Daniel hammered the walls, yelling, "Stop!" Silence crashed down, thick and wrong. Then a knock. He opened the door, empty hallway. A shiver raced through him. Tuesday's class went okay, but Daniel was distracted. Students eyed his shaky hands. After, he wandered campus, the whispers a steady buzz in his head. At dusk, he slumped by the quad's fountain, drained. His eyes slipped shut. A vision struck. Dark pines, a dirt path, Miller's fuel stop. The stranger stood there, but his face melted into shadow. Behind him, figures twisted, eyeless and gaunt, mouth gaping wide. A voice thundered, "You can't leave." Daniel jolted awake, gasping. Students gawked. He staggered home. The apartment was freezing. The whispers shrieked. "He's here." A shadow darted in the corner, tall and thin. Daniel blinked, it vanished. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered, hands trembling. Static hissed, then a voice. "Miller's Crossing. Midnight." Click. Part 9, The Return. Wednesday night, Daniel couldn't resist. The call ate at him. Against all reason, he drove back to Route 7. The road pulsed with malice, alive. Miller's fuel stop loomed ahead, unchanged. He parked, flashlight gripped tight. The stranger stepped from the dark. "Told you not to linger," he growled. "Who's coming?" Daniel demanded. "What's the hollow one?" The man's eyes widened. "You heard it. It's awake. Slept since 62. You roused it." "Me?" Daniel's voice broke. "You stopped here. It marked you." The stranger pointed to the woods. "It's in there, waiting." A deep growl rolled from the trees. Daniel's beam caught motion. Something tall, too thin, slinking between trunks. His blood iced over. The stranger seized his arm. "Run now." Daniel dashed to his truck, the stranger trailing. The growl swelled, low, wet, unearthly. He fumbled the keys, glancing back. The thing stepped out. A skeletal shape, limbs too long, face a void with glowing eyes. The hollow one. "Go!" The stranger shouted, shoving him. Daniel floored it, tires spinning. The creature lunged, claws scraping the tailgate. The stranger screamed, then silence. In the mirror, Daniel saw nothing, just darkness eating the station. He hit Route 7, panting. The whispers roared in his skull. "You're mine." The truck jolted. The gauge sank to empty. Impossible, he'd filled it that morning. The engine coughed. Ahead, the highway twisted into fog. No black hollow, no signs, just road. The truck died at 2 in the morning. Daniel rolled to a halt, fog and pines closing in. The whispers mocked. No escape. He grabbed his phone, no bars. A shape rose in the mist, the hollow one, drifting nearer. He bolted into the woods, branches slashing his face. The air grew foul, heavy. Footsteps echoed, not his own. He tripped, landing by a rusted sign. Miller's Crossing, EST 1949. The station reappeared, yards off, lights flickering. Impossible. He'd driven miles. The creature's growl shook his core. Daniel ran inside, barring the door. Shelves crashed, windows darkened. A voice rasped from the counter. "Stay." He whirled. No one. Just a photo on the wall, the stranger, younger, grinning. Dated 1962. Daniel ripped the photo down, hands quaking. The whispers chanted. "He chose you." Footsteps circled outside. He peeked through a crack. The hollow one paced, eyes fixed on him. The stranger's words sank in. "It marked you." He scoured the station. A trapdoor behind the counter creaked open. Stairs plunged into shadow. No options left. He descended, flashlight wavering. The air turned damp, walls slick with moss. At the bottom, a cave. Bones littered the floor, skulls leering. A shrine of stones pulsed red. The whispers screamed, "Welcome home," etched in the wall. Daniel Carver, October 17, 2025. His name, today's date. His knees buckled. This wasn't chance. It knew him. The hollow one's shadow filled the cave's mouth. Daniel pressed against the shrine, heart pounding. "What do you want?" he yelled. A voice slithered through. "You!" Cold tendrils brushed his mind. Visions flashed. People vanishing, the stranger begging, the cult chanting. "One life feeds me. One life frees another." You took him, Daniel realized. The stranger. He lingered too long. You'll stay forever. The creature advanced, claws gleaming. Daniel's light hit the shrine. A heartbeat throbbed inside. Alive. Starving. "I won't!" he roared, lunging at the stones. He He smashed them, blood coating his hands. The cave quaked. The hollow one screeched, melting into mist. Silence fell. He'd stopped it. Or had he? Daniel stumbled out, dawn breaking. The station vanished. Just pines remained. He staggered to the highway, waving down a trucker. "Black Hollow," he gasped. The man nodded, eyeing him oddly. Back in town, Ellen met him at the hospital. "You're lucky," she said. "Route 7's a tomb." Daniel spilled it all, the chase, the whispers, the creature. She paled. "My uncle." He stopped at Miller's too. Days passed. The whispers ceased. Daniel taught his classes, tense but breathing. October bled into November. He thought it was done. Then, one night, a knock. He opened the door empty. A photo slid under, him at Miller's, smiling. Dated yesterday. Daniel burned the photo, hands shaking. Impossible, he hadn't returned. Sleep brought terrors, the hollow one hissing his name. He shunned Route 7, but the town felt warped. Shadows lingered too long. Students murmured about him. Ellen called. Found something. 1962 cult notes. They didn't die, they merged with it. The hollow one's a hive. You didn't kill it, you fueled it. Her voice trembled. It's still there, growing. That night, the whispers returned. "Thank you." Louder, layered, a chorus. Daniel checked the locks, pulse racing. A shadow shifted outside. Tall, thin, eyeless. Then another, and another. They ringed the building. Thursday, November 8th, Daniel woke to silence. Too quiet. He peeked out, fog-smothered Black Hollow. No cars, no people, just shapes in the haze. Dozens, hundreds, all eyeless, all staring. The hollow one's hive. He ran, but the streets circled back to campus. The whispers laughed. "You're home." His apartment door gaped open. Inside, the shrine from the cave pulsed, rebuilt. His name glowed on the wall, joined by others. Ellen, Mara, the stranger. All dated today. The hollow one towered, its void face splitting into a grin. "You freed me. Now I take them all." Claws pierced his chest, cold surging. His sight dimmed as the hive chanted his name. Outside, Black Hollow dissolved into mist, leaving only whispers. No one would find him or the town ever again. The Shadow Order. It was a bitter November night in Ashwood, Indiana. The year was 2022, and I, Daniel Carter, had been hauling meals for Quick Bite for almost a year. At 42, I was a single dad, piecing life together after a rough divorce, delivering food to fund my daughter's college tuition. The gig wasn't much, but it paid the bills. That night, around 11, I was ready to clock out when my phone pinged with one final order. The drop-off was 17 Hollow Lane, a place 30 minutes west of town. Strange. Most customers lived in Ashwood's tidy neighborhoods, not the desolate farmland out there. The tip was $20 though, so I shrugged it off and accepted. I entered the address into my GPS, and its mechanical voice led me away from the glow of streetlights. The road narrowed, pavement giving way to gravel, flanked by towering cornfields under a starless sky. My sedan jolted along, headlights slicing through the dark. The farther I went, the quieter it got. No traffic, no houses, just the engine's drone and the wind hissing through dry stalks. A knot tightened in my gut. Who orders a burger this far out at this hour? I pushed the thought aside. Money was money. Then the GPS chirped, "You have arrived." I rolled to a stop before a dilapidated two-story house, set back from the lane. Its paint flaked like dead skin, windows black except for a lone bulb stuttering above the sagging porch. The place looked abandoned, forgotten by time. I sat there, hands on the wheel, weighing my options. I could ditch the food and go screw the tip, but a low rating might cut my hours, and I couldn't afford that. I exhaled hard, grabbed the bag, and stepped into the cold. The air bit my face, thick with the scent of wet soil. Gravel snapped under my boots as I approached. Up close, the house was a wreck. Boards crisscrossed the windows, ivy strangling the walls. My breath fogged as I knocked. Silence. I rapped again, louder. Then, footsteps, slow and heavy, thudding inside. My pulse quickened. The door groaned open, and a woman stood there. Tall, gaunt, maybe 60, with matted white hair and eyes like polished stones. She stared, unblinking. "Delivery for 17 Hollow Lane?" I said, managing a weak smile. Her lips twisted into a jagged grin. "Yes, Daniel. Bring it inside. They're waiting." I stiffened. How did she know my name? Her voice scraped like brittle twigs. "Come now, Daniel." Upstairs. "They're hungry." I clutched the bag, its paper crinkling in my sweaty hands. My name tag, pinned to my jacket, explained her knowing me, I reasoned. Still, dread coiled tight in my chest. "I'll leave it here," I said, lowering the food to the porch. "Policy says I can't come in." Her grin vanished. "No," she barked, stepping forward. "You bring it up. Second floor. Now." Her hand darted out, skeletal fingers locking around my wrist. Her skin was freezing, her strength uncanny for someone so frail. I jerked back, tripping over the porch's edge. "Let go," I shouted. She held firm, her eyes darkening, pupils bleeding into the whites. "You're expected," she rasped. Fear exploded in me. I twisted free, staggering, and sprinted for my car. Her laugh trailed after, deep, unnatural, chilling. I fumbled my keys, glancing over my shoulder. She stood rooted, smirking. But two shapes emerged from the gloom behind her. Tall, hooded, silent as graves. My throat closed up. I dove into the driver's seat, stabbing the key into the ignition. The engine coughed, then roared to life. Tires spat gravel as I floored it, stealing one last look. She waved slowly, mockingly, while the hooded figures stepped into the lane, watching me flee. I didn't ease off the gas until I hit Route 7, the highway back to Ashwood. My hands shook, sweat soaking through my shirt. What was that? A sick joke? A trap? Her words looped in my head. "They're waiting." Who or what? I burst into Quick Bite's storefront, gasping. Marla, my boss, a tough woman in her 50s, looked up from behind the counter. "Carter, you okay? You're white as a sheet." "I don't know what I saw," I managed, voice trembling. "That last drop, something's not right." She wiped her hands on her apron, frowning. "Sit down. Talk." I spilled it, the house, the woman, those figures. Marla's expression tightened. 17 Hollow Lane, you said?" "Yeah. What about it?" She paused, eyes distant. "That house has been empty since the 80s. Whole family vanished there. No one's lived in it since." My stomach lurched. "Vanished? How?" "No one knows. Just gone. Cops found nothing. Folks say it's cursed." I forced a shaky laugh. "Cursed? Really, Marla?" Her face stayed grim. "You're not the first driver to come back rattled from that stretch." Marla's story clung to me as I drove home that night. It was 1 in the morning when I pulled into my driveway on Cedar Street. My rental house felt like a sanctuary until I tried to rest. Every groan of the old would snap me awake, her voice whispering in my mind. "You're expected." By dawn, I'd barely closed my eyes. I called Marla. "I'm done," I said. "I quit." "Daniel, hold on." She began, but I cut the line. I couldn't face another run, not after that. Yet questions gnawed at me. Who was she? What did she want? I had to know. At noon, I headed to Ashwood's library on Maple Avenue, a low brick building humming with quiet. I asked Tom, the gray-haired librarian, for old papers about Hollow Lane. He arched a brow but directed me to the microfiche room. I pored over faded articles for hours. In 1983, the Harper family, John, Evelyn, and their 2 children, lived at 17 Hollow Lane. One October night, neighbors saw odd lights and heard noises from the house. By morning, the Harpers were gone, no trace, no explanation. Police labeled it a runaway case, but whispers hinted at cults or hauntings. A piece from 1984 mentioned a delivery boy vanishing near Hollow Lane. My scalp tingled. Another, from 1990, reported a trucker disappearing after a late stop nearby. Too many coincidences. Then I found it, a 1978 photo of a wild-haired woman outside that house. Caption: Local recluse Evelyn Harper declines comment. It was her, the woman from last night. But that couldn't be. She'd be ancient now, not 60. I left the library, mind reeling. At home, I bolted the doors, shut the blinds. Night crept in, bringing a creeping dread. At 10, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You didn't deliver. They're still hungry. Ice flooded my veins. I dialed the police. Officers Jenkins and Patel arrived within 20 minutes. I showed them the message, told them everything. Jenkins, a burly man in his 40s, scowled. We'll look into it. Stay here. They drove off and I paced, waiting. Hours later, Jenkins called. Place is deserted. No woman, no figures. Just an empty shell. You sure about this? I know what happened. I snapped. He sighed. We'll patrol it. Lock up tight. I did. But as I lay in bed, a soft tapping started at my window. I shot up, pulse racing. The tapping persisted, light, steady, like nails on glass. My bedroom overlooked the backyard, cloaked in shadow. I snatched a baseball bat from the closet and edged to the window, nudging the curtain aside. Nothing, just bare branches swaying in the breeze. Then I saw it. A handprint on the glass, too big to be mine, smeared in something dark. I recoiled, breath hitching. Blood? Dirt? Couldn't tell. I called Jenkins. Someone's outside my house. It's 3 in the morning, Carter, he grumbled. There's a damn handprint on my window. A beep. We're coming. They rolled up at 4, flashlights cutting through the yard. Patel, a lean woman in her 30s, studied the mark. Looks like mud, she said. Maybe kids messing with you. After last night? You believe that? I shot back. She shrugged. We'll report it. Rest up. Rest was a joke. By morning, I was jittery, fueled by coffee. At 8, Lily, my daughter, called from college in Ohio. Dad, you sound wrecked. What's up? Rough week. I lied. How's school? She rambled about her classes, unaware of my terror. After the call, I stared at the handprint, still stark in daylight. Something bugged me. 5 fingers, but the thumb was too long, twisted. That afternoon, I visited Father Brooks at St. Mary's on Elm Street. He was a gentle man in his 50s with a soothing voice. I wasn't a believer, but I needed someone sane to listen. In his cramped office, I laid it all out. The delivery, the woman, the text, the print. He leaned forward, brow creased. Hollow Lane. I've heard tales. Old ones. That land's got a shadow over it. Something about a ritual long before the Harpers. A ritual? I pressed. He nodded. 1800s. Settlers there tampered with forces they didn't understand. Called something up. Never put it back. My throat tightened. You think it's still there? Could be. Or maybe it's stirred again. He paused. Daniel, anything odd since that night? Marks? Dreams? I shook my head, then stopped. Last night, my arm had itched. I dismissed it. Now I rolled up my sleeve. There, in faint red lines, was a symbol. A circle with 3 sharp slashes. Father Brooks paled. That's no accident. Father Brooks gaped at the mark, hands unsteady as he pulled a worn book from his shelf. This is trouble, Daniel, he murmured, flipping pages. Big trouble. What is it? I demanded, voice tight. He landed on a drawing, a circle with slashes, matching mine. A sigil, he said, ancient, linked to the Shadow Order. The what? A bargain, he explained, meeting my gaze. In 1852, settlers on that land were starving. They struck a deal with something. It gave them food, prosperity. They gave it people, travelers, loners, anyone who wandered too close. The order tied it to that house. The Harpers must have woken it. I barked a brittle laugh. So I delivered to some demon? Not just a demon, he said. Something older. It's awake, and it's claimed you. I stumbled out of the church, skull throbbing. The mark burned now, alive under my skin. At home, I scrubbed it with soap, no luck. The 6, my phone pinged, no caller ID. The text read, "You can't run. They smell you." I dropped it, slamming into the wall. The air grew heavy, oppressive. Then whispers, faint, overlapping, from nowhere. "Hungry? Bring him." I snatched my keys and bolted to my car. I drove aimlessly, out past Ashwood's edge onto winding roads. The whispers swelled, scraping inside my head. I veered onto Pine Road, brakes squealing, and stopped dead. 3 figures stood in my headlights. Hooded, still. The woman wasn't there, but I knew they were hers. I floored it, aiming to plow through. They didn't budge. The car hit nothing. No thud, no resistance. They vanished. I raced home, shoving a chair against the door. The whispers faded, but the quiet was worse. At midnight, a knock slow measured. I peeked out. Jenkins stood there, alone, face blank, eyes dull. I cracked the door. "What's happening?" "You didn't deliver," he said, voice flat. "They're starving." Jenkins lunged, fingers clawing for my neck. I shoved him back, slamming the door and throwing the bolt. He hammered it, growling, "Open it, Daniel. They need you." His voice twisted, inhuman. I gripped the bat, retreating. The banging stopped, but I heard him circle the house, rattling windows. Then nothing. I waited, drenched in sweat, until sunlight crept in. He was gone. At 8, I called Patel. "Jenkins attacked me last night at my house." "What?" Her tone sharpened. "He's been off since yesterday." "Where are you?" "Home." "He's not here now, but stay put. I'm on my way." She arrived in 20 minutes, cruiser Askew in my drive. "Tell me," she said, pen ready. I did the mark, the priest, Jenkins. She paused mid-note. "You're saying he's taken?" "I don't know. He wasn't right." She sighed, weary. "I'll check on him." But Hollow Lane, we searched it again. Found bones in the basement. Old, human. My legs gave. "Bones?" "Yeah, lab's got them now. Stay here, lock everything. I'll call." She left. I stared at the mark, darker, almost black. The whispers hissed again. "He's ours. You're next." At noon, Patel rang. "Jenkins is gone. Wife says he never came home. His cruiser's out by Hollow Lane, empty." "God!" I whispered. "Daniel, leave Ashwood. Now." I didn't argue. I packed clothes, cash, Lily's photo, and drove east toward Indianapolis, an hour away. The whispers dimmed with distance. By 3, I booked a motel off Interstate 65. The room stank of damp, but I felt safe. I called Lily. "Hey kid, I'm traveling for a bit." "Dad, what's wrong?" She pressed. "Just trust me. Love you." I crashed on the bed, drained. Sleep came until scratching woke me. It was dark, past 9. The noise came from the wall, slow, deliberate. I flicked on the lamp. The wallpaper bulged, something pressing through. It stopped. A shadow slid across the floor. Tall, hooded, sourceless. I grabbed my bag and ran. Outside, the lot was dead, except for Jenkins' cruiser, parked under a dying streetlight. I stood, rooted, staring at the cruiser. The motel's sign buzzed, throwing jagged shadows. My breath misted as I edged to my car, keys shaking. The cruiser's door hung open, empty. I slid inside my sedan, locked it, and tore out. The highway yawned ahead, black and vast. I kept glancing back, expecting lights, or worse. Nothing trailed me, but the mark seared, pulsing with my heartbeat. By midnight, I stopped at a gas station 20 miles from Indianapolis. The clerk, a lanky guy in his 30s, barely glanced up as I paid for coffee. "Bad night?" he asked. "Worse than you'd believe," I muttered, peering outside. The lot was clear, then it wasn't. 3 hooded figures stood by the pumps, motionless. My cup fell, coffee splattering. "You good, man?" the clerk called. I didn't reply. I bolted to my car, tires shrieking as I sped off. The figures didn't stir, just stared. My phone buzzed, You can't leave them empty. I yelled, chucking it aside. The whispers roared. Come back. Feed us. I swerved, nearly crashing, and hit the brakes. The mark blazed, unbearable. I couldn't outrun it, it was dragging me back. Against all reason, I turned around, heading for Ashwood, for Hollow Lane. Maybe confronting it would stop this. By 2 a.m, I pulled up to the house. The porch light flickered, the silence suffocating. I stepped out, legs weak. The door hung open. Inside, the air reeked of decay. My flashlight swept over cracked walls and shattered chairs. What do you want? I shouted. Her laugh slithered from the dark. She appeared, eyes glinting. You brought yourself. Perfect. Where's Jenkins? I growled, clutching the bat. Fed, she said, teeth flashing. Like the rest. But they need more. Floorboards creaked behind me. I spun. 2 hooded figures loomed, faces obscured. Then Jenkins, gray-skinned, eyes black pits, charged. I swung, cracking his head. He didn't falter, kept coming. I bolted upstairs, chest heaving. The hall stretched on, doors locked tight, except one. I burst in, barricading it. The room was empty but for a mirror. My reflection glared back, then shifted. The mark glowed on its arm, its grin stretching too wide. I stumbled back from the mirror, my reflection's smile splitting its face. The mark on my arm flared, and the whispers became howls. Hours. The door shuddered, Jenkins and the others clawing, hammering. No windows, no way out, just me and that glass. My reflection pressed closer, distorting the surface. You can't stop it, Daniel, it said, my voice warped hollow. They picked you. Who? I screamed, throat raw. What are they? Her laugh seeped through the walls. The Shadow Order, she called. Tied here, fed by us, starving since the Harpers broke the chain. The mirror rippled, and my reflection stepped free, flesh melting like wax. I swung the bat. It sliced through air, useless. Cold hands seized me, real solid, dragging me down. Jenkins and the hoods held me, their mouths yawning impossibly wide. I kicked, yelled, as she knelt beside me. You'll feed them forever, she whispered. Our new keeper. The mark erupted, lines snaking across my skin. Agony blinded me, then nothing. I woke on the porch, dawn painting Hollow Lane gray. The house stood silent, my car gone, my phone and bat missing. I staggered up, the mark now a scar, cold and dead. I hitched a ride to Ashwood on Route 7. No one mentioned Hollow Lane back in town. Marla acted like I'd never left Quickbite. Patel said Jenkins took early retirement. Lily called, bubbly, clueless. But I felt it, their hunger, not mine. It gnawed at me, growing nightly. Within a week, I was driving not for Quickbite, for them. I'd pick up hitchhikers, loners, anyone lost, and deliver them to Hollow Lane. The house would flare with light, whispers cheering as they vanished inside. I tried to quit. I'd drive off, resist. But the mark would ignite, and she'd hiss. Feed them or they take you. Last night, I stood on my porch, Hollow Lane burning in my mind. She appeared, not flesh, but there. You're ours now, she said. My reflection in the window wasn't me. It was her, smirking. Behind her, endless faces, hollow and shrieking, stretched into the dark. I fed them 30 souls this month. They're still ravenous. They'll never stop. Now I'm at your door, bag in hand. Delivery, I'll say. Will you open it?